Welcome everyone to the re-recording of Calm in the Chaos, 5 strategies to stress less and lead better. Why is this a re-recording? Well, we had a little chaos, we had some technical difficulties, and we wanted to walk our talk and reset our mindset and look at this as an opportunity to practice what we're teaching. And so we looked at this as an opportunity to achieve some calm without judgment and just still reach the audience we wanted to with a new recording. My name is Michael Steelman. I'm the CEO of the Leadership Coach Group, and I just wanted to give an opportunity for my colleagues to briefly introduce themselves. You'll hear our presenter in just a moment, Jerry Anathan. Jerry?
Hi, I'm Jerry Anathan.
Great to have you, Jerry. And Carl?
Hi everyone. I'm happy to be here, and I'm Carl, calling in from the Philippines.
Thank you, Carl. And Maya?
Hi everyone, my name is Maya. I'm the Business Development Manager here at Leadership Coach Group. Happy to be here.
Thank you, Maya. And if you ever wanted some help, support beyond what you hear here, you could reach out to me or to Maya. We'd be happy to talk with you about our services. Now, without further ado, we're going to jump into our re-recording of Calm in the Chaos, 5 science-based strategies to stress less and lead better. This is the latest installment in our webinar series that we call Open Coaching. You might ask, why Open Coaching? Well, Open Coaching means that we give people that participate an opportunity to be coached by our presenter on the topics that they present. And we do this every month. We do it the first Friday of the month at noon Eastern time. And we have rotating hosts and themes on topics that we believe are of interest and timely for our audience. We try to provide actionable insights, and so you leave every session with fresh perspectives and things that you can act on right away. To support you in your leadership growth, we have a step-by-step playbook that expands on the themes you'll hear from our presenters. And as I mentioned, we give you the opportunity to volunteer in coaching. Since this is a re-recording, you'll just hear us being coached by Jerry on some of the strategies that she presents. So what's in the playbook? Well, this playbook, Calm in the Chaos Leadership Playbook, will have the 5 strategies that Jerry will be talking about today. They'll dive into them in greater depth, and it'll also include practical tools and techniques, engaging reflection questions, and hands-on activities that allow you to apply the strategies that you hear about from Jerry. And we also wanted to let you know about our services. We hope that you'll be able to act on what you hear today with the support of the playbook. And if you want some more support, we're there for you. We have one-on-one coaching, so you can get coached from great coaches like Jerry and other members of our team. We also have a variety of services that support a team as a whole, including team coaching, leadership training, inspirational speakers, and we provide leadership assessments to help you figure out where you are, how you're showing up right now as a leader, what your personality might be. We have a variety of assessments to support you in your leadership journey. Our coaches have coached leaders of many different companies, nonprofits, government agencies. Here's some logos of some global brands where our coaches have coached leaders. And that includes Oracle, Dropbox, Microsoft, Facebook, NextEra Energy, Salesforce, Sony, FICO, and many others. These are just a sample of some of the places our coaches have supported leaders. We've also supported leaders in small businesses down to one-person ownership of a company, all the way up to global brands that we have here today. So whatever the size of your organization or whatever the challenge you're facing, we can support you as well. Following this webinar, you have access to our playbook, to our slide deck, and also to get a complimentary coaching session from Jerry. There'll be a web page that has all these things in there, and you can just download the playbook or download the slide deck or click on the schedule button to have a complimentary coaching session with Jerry. And we encourage you to take advantage of all these resources. So without further ado, I get to introduce my colleague, Geraldine Jerry Anathan. She's one of our co-founders of the Leadership Coach Group. She's a friend. She's an amazing leader and expert in things like psychological safety, organizational psychology, meditation, mindfulness, and she even owned a yoga studio. So all this background allows her to be an executive and peak performance coach with over a decade of experience. She has a master's in psychology from Harvard, focused on organizational behavior. She's certified in positive intelligence, psychological safety, and flow state optimization. She specializes in bringing science-backed strategies to help her clients with resilience, engagement, and overall well-being. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce my colleague, Jerry Anathan.
Michael, thank you for that warm welcome. It's nice to hear all those accolades. I can't believe they're mine, but it's wonderful.
You've earned them, Jerry. You've earned them.
True. I guess I did. So before we dive in, I know that each of you that is watching right now is sort of doing it on your own time, and you may have distractions in your background or noises, other things to do today. So let's get started by just taking a moment to arrive right here, right now, with just a very simple breath reset. And we're just going to do one breath together. We've got a lot to cover in a short time. So if I'm talking fairly quickly today, I just want us to be able to really make sure we're present, really feeling centered. So this one breath is called coherent breathing. And what happens is we will inhale for a count of 4, we'll hold for a count of 4, and then we'll exhale for a count of 6. Okay, so let's begin together. Maybe planting both feet on the floor first. And we'll inhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. And exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And let's even do 7 and 8. Great. Nice job. So when we are exhaling, when our exhale is longer than the inhale, we're calming our nervous system by activating what you've probably heard of, the parasympathetic nervous system. That's the part of your nervous system that signals safety, ease, contentment. And even just a few of these intentional breaths can shift your internal state. And that small shift can be the change in how you show up, how you lead for yourself and for everyone else in your life. Okay, so now we can get started. Let's talk about what real calm looks like in practice, especially when things are kind of feeling anything but calm. So a few months ago, I had an unexpected experience that completely kind of reshaped the way I think about my own nervous system, which was interesting because I do have a yoga background, meditation background, the science of flow state, practice a lot of mindfulness, but in early March, I had a concussion, and it wasn't anything super, super traumatic, but it really slowed everything way down for me. My thinking was really foggy. My reactions were definitely delayed by a couple of seconds. It was a very strange kind of mindset to be in because I'm a pretty quick mover. I'm a quick talker, and I just had to put one foot in front of the other with almost everything I was doing. That everything from coaching, communication, speaking, moving, dressing, everything was really slow. And while it was really, really frustrating, what came out of that, what the beautiful part of what came out of that was a very, like a still kind of presence. I was just right there in the moment. I didn't have the bandwidth to ruminate or stress about other things that I couldn't control. And while I wouldn't wish a concussion on anyone, I do wish we could all more often experience that type of calm. And it's still, the residuals are still there, and I'm tying them into all the things I know about mindfulness. So what we know is that calm does not mean the absence of stress. It simply means being able to stay steady and clear, even in the midst of it. So let's talk about what makes calm leadership so challenging these days. So as leaders right now, we're not just managing tasks, we're managing energy, emotions, and expectations. And not just our own, but everyone else's too. Again, your coworkers, your direct reports, your family, maybe even community, people in your neighborhood. Too often we see our clients reacting instead of actually leading. And that's a problem because that's not where we want to be. Putting out a lot of fires, doing the work that really matters is where we want to be focused. So just take a moment to think about what your biggest challenges are right now. Just take a couple breaths thinking about those challenges, because today's session is about those moments. It's about learning how to reset from your inside out, and so that you can always lead with clarity. And that happens even when the ground is continually shifting. In today's world, the ability to be calm may be your greatest leadership skill. And we want to help you understand how to reset. Clarity under pressure isn't luck. It's a skill that can be developed. We can train it.
Jerry,
So
when
today,
I did
yes,
that exercise, you know, what you said kind of come to mind what might be stressful. And I thought of both professional things like the business environment, the volatile economic situation that many of us are faced with right now, and that uncertainty. And I also thought about, you know, my family life and, you know, personal life, some challenges there. Like I both those came to mind, and I, you know, maybe there's also a relationship between those two too.
sure. Yes. And I think these research-backed strategies that we're going to go through today, they're very much tied into our nervous system. So you can apply these to any aspect of your life, Michael, and everybody else who's listening. They're very simple, and it was hard to sort of synthesize it down to 5 because there are many, many tools that we use as coaches that I use in my flow state work. But these 5 are really lovely, and they're easy to learn. You can use them under pressure, and each one builds on the one before it. And together they form a path sort of out of that reactivity place into grounded, intentional leadership. And while this sounds repetitive, it's very important. These are base parts of our nervous system, and we just want to allow ourselves the privilege and the right to be grounded in any particular moment that we choose. So let's begin with something simple but really powerful. So this first strategy is about catching yourself in the moment and choosing presence over your autopilot response. When pressure hits, your brain goes into a high alert system. That's where the old patterns show up, the sort of the cynic, the critic, the perfectionist, the overachiever, the imposter. We all have our version. So maybe just think about a couple versions you might have. A couple of my clients, they even sort of name their saboteur or their antagonist, which can be kind of fun. Sets up a little dialogue that you can have with your antagonist. Sorry. It's interesting. I worked with a client recently, and he said, I feel like all I'm doing all day long, every day, is putting out fires, helping other people's work, and I'm not able to execute the bigger strategies, the bigger things that I need to be working on. So we had him do two things, two very simple things. He, turned off his email and only checked it once in the mid-morning and once in the mid-afternoon. And he turned off all of his notifications. And the next day he texted me and said it was one of his most productive days in 2025. So that is the kind of thing, that he was able to name. I'm spinning out. He gave his sort of antagonist a few names and was able to see where that pressure was coming from. When you name what you're feeling, you're taking you're processing those thoughts, stepping aside and saying, I am feeling confused. I am feeling pressure. I am feeling frustrated. You're taking those thoughts and processing them in your prefrontal cortex. And that part of your brain is the part that is sort of like the chairman of the board of your brain, to be honest. It controls all of the processing, the reasonable decision-making. It dials down the amygdala, which is reacting to all of the fear or the flight system. So that pause gives you just enough time to respond with intention instead of, reacting on autopilot. Some things you can ask yourself is like, hey, what's the story I'm telling myself right now? What part of me is reacting? And can I rewrite this story? Can I make it a different story with a different ending? And that's where the clarity begins. So you might have read or have heard of Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. And in that book, he has the most wonderful quote ever. Between the stimulus and the response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. And our response lies, in our response lies our growth and our freedom. So I think if we can apply that type of thing, taking a moment, we have a stimulus, we have a space, and in that space we say, what's going on for me? What is really happening inside my brain? What am I experiencing? We will immediately be able to calm ourselves to some extent. Even with all that awareness, it's hard sometimes to think clearly when your brain is overloaded. You know, we might say, oh, that's great, you know, if you're running a meditation studio, but what if you're a CEO of a company and you've got many, many decisions to make at all times? When your brain is overloaded, there's not too much you can do if there's too much coming toward you. So let's talk about how to sort of lighten that load and moving on to the second strategy. So once we've named what's happening internally, as we just discussed, the next challenge is everything coming at us externally. Because clarity it's not just really about mindset, it's about your mental bandwidth. And when your brain is flooded, of course, clarity disappears, you're not able to lead. If you're jumping between messages, meetings, decisions, checking platforms or apps on your phone, alerts, your brain is going to stay stuck in this very low gear. Think of it like this, your brain is like a browser on your computer, multiple tabs open. That is your brain. And there are things we can do to clear that out. And it's literally the stuff that's coming at us externally. Right now, maybe just look around your desk, look around at the number of technological machines in your space. It's pretty crazy. What do we need to do? Well, there are a lot of things we can do with our space, with our environment, but here are a few simple things we can do. Completely close your inbox when you're not actively using it, as we discussed. Delete one app that hijacks your focus that you have either on your phone or your desktop. Start batching your one-on-one meetings. This is one of my favorite strategies for leaders. Take all those one-on-one meetings and pop them into 2 days a week max. You don't need to sprinkle your one-on-one meetings throughout the week if you have control of your schedule. If you are really executing like a chief, you want to be able to condense all of those types of meetings so that you free yourself up for more cognitive load where you really need it. Task switching, all of this stuff is so difficult. Turning off your notifications, just try it for a day and see what happens. Banners and pop-ups and all those things, all they're doing is tricking your mind to stop really processing. And these aren't just productivity hacks, they are neuroscience. So we just have to remember that fewer input means more clarity. Because when your brain's out of space, your thinking just won't work. So we want to give it as much space as we can. And your leadership brain will thank you. And before we go to the next strategy, I just want to introduce a concept that underpins a lot of the work that I do in peak performance and leadership coaching, which is around flow state. So this will be a very, very quick, teeny microcosm of a lesson about flow state. And flow state is that mental zone where you're feeling fully immersed in what you're doing, you're deeply focused, and you're often feeling your most productive and your most creative. And there's a reason for that. Your body is producing and releasing 5 of its most powerful neurochemicals during this state. We don't have time to go into that today. It's really interesting stuff, and it's not something that you can force, but you can certainly create the right conditions for it. If ever you want to hear more about that, please get in touch with Michael and we can set up a call. But we don't have time for that today. What I want to show you is this flow cycle. And every single part of this 4-stage flow cycle is important. Now, it starts with the struggle phase, and that's when you're learning, you're problem solving, or you're taking a look at that challenge of what might have happened. The second stage is what's called release, and that's when you've done your kind of friction and you step away from it, shake it off. It might last a minute, it might last an hour, whatever it is, you're just kind of releasing all of that tension and friction. Then we step into flow. It might be when you come back from drinking your glass of water, you sit down and you're ready to get into it. Flow can last for what we like to say are the best work blocks are anywhere between 60 to 90 minutes. And that's when, right around the 90-minute mark, we start to lose a little bit of that bandwidth. And so it's best to step away and go into what we call recovery. Now, for most people, this is the most difficult thing to let go. It's sort of like those who are having a difficult time relaxing after a yoga class, oh, I can't sit still in yoga. Same goes with recovery stage, yet it's the most important stage. And today what we're going to do is just talk about micro recoveries. These are specifically small and very easy to integrate into your day. So our human brains, they are not built to match what's going on in your laptop with, the processing of your laptop. Our brains are human, and they are always trying to keep up with everything going on around us, especially as, AI is coming into the universe, and just the pace of things is moving so fast. But trying to keep up that pace is the absolute recipe for burnout. And burnout is really, it's also scientifically backed. It's not a good place to go. So we want to be very, very careful and take these micro recoveries. What creates resilience is not powering through, right? It's about pausing strategically. Micro recoveries are these very short, intentional resets, 1 to 2 minutes. It helps you shift between tasks, restores clarity, helps you be much more regulated in your nervous system. It could be a single breath with your eyes closed, sort of like what we did this morning when we got started. It could be stepping outside for 90 minutes. If you follow Andrew Huberman at all, you'll know that just having a little bit of sunlight in your eyes sets off a beautiful neural response within the body physiologically. Running your hands under cold water. If you're really quick, you could take a quick 60-minute or 60-second, 90-second shower. Anything that kind of changes up your nervous system. The point is to signal to your body that it's ready to reset. Think about it this morning or today when you sat down to listen to this webinar. Before that, did you give yourself any time for a micro recovery? Just think about that. And if not, you're not alone. But the good news is these are totally doable, totally teachable. We have a list of a bunch of micro recoveries that are just really fun to play with. It's almost like knowing that micro recovery is coming in an hour and a half or an hour or 30 minutes. It feels good. It's like a little vacation. You're setting off serotonin and saying, yay, I get to do X in 30 minutes. So, but we need to be really clear. So before we move on, let's just make sure we clear something up, because not everything that feels like a break really is a break. So let's talk about what doesn't count, because not all breaks are created equal. Scrolling through your phone, that is not recovery. It's swapping out one stream of stimulation for another. Checking your texts or emails, no, that's just increasing your cognitive load. It's not lightening it. Turning on the news or a podcast, again, that's more input and not less. Grabbing a cup of coffee or a glass of water, while you can maybe do that, that is not, that's a neutral. That's more of an autopilot gesture for yourself. That's not something that's going to help you reestablish a baseline positive nervous system. So certainly they feel like a pause, but they're just not. We don't want to check out. We want to tune in. Even that one single conscious breath between the back-to-back meetings can change your state more than a 10-minute phone scroll. So let's focus less on escaping and more on that true result. Happy to help you with any kind of recipes for micro recoveries down the way. If those micro recoveries help you reset, the next strategy is where you direct and how you direct that renewed energy. Because when the world around you feels chaotic, anchoring yourself to what you can control is one of the most powerful things that you can do as a leader. So let's talk about how we can do that. So we here have an anchor, and we like to use this analogy because when we're overwhelmed, we often put our energy and our mindset into things that we can't control, whether it's, what's going on today, the tariffs, war, politics, the price changes, whatever the latest headlines are, can be very kind of destabilizing. And if you think about it, there's absolutely no way these things can be calming. It's just not possible. They're not useful. They're not calming. So it likely pushes you again a little bit toward burnout to be tuned into everything that's going on that we can't control. What actually creates clarity is learning to ground yourself in what we can influence. And we call this our leadership anchor triad, because the intersection of these three domains really can shape your experience in any moment. So let's take a look at these: environment, mindset, and action. These are your anchor points, because when everything around you is shifting, they help you stay steady and clear. But here's the thing, it doesn't mean rigidity. So you think about that line from the anchor up to your boat, and there's some give in it. There's some flow, some flexibility. It's not about rigidity. In rough water, you want to stay tethered, but not locked up. So let's look at each of these. Your physical surroundings, your environment, the space you work in, the sounds, the screens, the smells around you. These are things that you can control, right? So you want to create an environment that truly supports your work or your productivity. Oftentimes I look around at my own workspace and I think, how did all this stuff get on here? The moment I clear it off, it's like I'm right back into flow, because it's anything that your eyes can see is a distraction, okay? So we just want to think about, how do we create the environment? And not only what do we see, what do we sense around us? And we have the ability to change that. So the simplest little changes here can really make a big difference. Next of all, your mindset. Sometimes easier said than done, but what beliefs are you holding on to that you can let go? These tie into some of the other practices we've talked about. What thought habits do you have that you could improve? And it takes some work, but that's part of personal and professional development, and it's important. The last is your actions. So kind of what comes to my mind is like, well, what are you going to do about it? So, I thought, oh, shoot, we didn't get the recording done. Well, what can we do about it? So we all decided, big deal, we'll re-record it, do it in a different way. This is an action that we've taken to make this absolutely not a problem at all, and nothing to stress about. Actions are really important. And just think about just another close your eyes and take a breath moment. What's one action you could take today that would really align with your goals, with your purpose? Maybe even write it down, jot it down. So again, clarity doesn't come from trying to control the chaos. It really comes from just returning to what's yours to navigate. And once you've anchored there, your space, your mindset, your actions, there's one more place to go. And to recap a little bit here, so far we've named what's happening inside, we've cleared space, we've built in recovery through micro recovery strategies, and we've anchored to what we can control. And this strategy is really the heart of it all, because without this final piece, the others are definitely difficult to sustain. And I've saved it for last because it's actually the quickest fix out there, and it relates, of course, to all the other 4 strategies. So when pressure arises, most of us default to one of 2 patterns. We either try to fix everything, kind of control everything, jump into that control space, or we go into sort of a freeze and like a little child clenching their eyes in their mouth, like, make it go away. We just hope the thing will resolve on its own, and we don't want to take action in it. But there's a third path, and that is connecting to that sort of higher self, that wiser part of you that knows where to lead from. This strategy is about tuning into what we call frequency. Why that word? Because every emotional state that we connect to, every thought pattern has its own energetic signature. So if we're kind of berating ourselves or beating ourselves up or freezing, that's not really where we want to lead from. And if we can think about, what's a better song I can hear? What's a better story I can lead with? Who do I want to be in this moment? How do I want to show up for everyone around me? And yes, there is neuroscience behind that, because when you're caught in those moments of what you want to call them, dark thoughts or sad thoughts, fear, blame, anger, overwhelm, frustration, again, we're popping into our amygdala. It can actually take over. One small thought sets off sort of a cascade, a domino effect of more bad thoughts. So if we can go and again pop into the creative, solution-oriented part of our mind, the prefrontal cortex, and say, who do I want to be here? Whether it's tuning into presence, curiosity, empathy, you can do this. We can do it in less than a second. We just have to remember. And I look up when I say frequency because for some reason I think of the bars of notes in a musical score. And I think, yeah, I could be down here in the DE range, or I could pop myself up a whole octave and connect to something that's much more beautiful, much more impactful, and I think just more strategic. So I call that part like my higher self or my highest self. And in other modalities like positive intelligence, they call it the sage. And you might have your own name for it. In fact, think about what you might call that part of yourself and just tune into it for a moment, see what that feels like. Because when we lead from that place, from that inner calm, not only are we shifting our nervous system, but you're shifting the energy around you. You're having influence over everything and everyone around you. So let's just take a moment and let that land. Sometimes all it takes is to shift your state. And to get there, we need to just ask ourselves perhaps the right question. So let's talk about what that looks like with the next slide. So let's say we're just in a situation and we're not feeling good about it. Step outside yourself and ask yourself a couple of questions. What would the clearest version of me show up as? What really matters right now and what doesn't matter? Am I reacting or am I responding with intention? What energy do I want to bring to this moment? So these are the kind of questions you can ask yourself in real time and bring yourself back to that space of clarity and presence. A lot of information in a short time, I know, but let's just take one moment. Repetition is king. So let's take a moment to review the 5 strategies that we've explored. Name it to tame it, which is recognize and label your internal state to activate your brain's calming pathways. Shrinking your cognitive load. This is a big one. It's fun to do it. I mean, it's fun to actually go into your external environment, clear it out, simplify it. Creating those micro recoveries, another thing that can be really fun and enjoyable, pleasurable. Focusing on your environment, your mindset and actions, your anchor. It's always good to have an anchor. Helps us feel grounded and safe. And then leading from your highest frequency, from your inner calm. These 5 tools you can tune into at any time. They don't take a lot of effort, but they do take discipline. And I would just suggest you take 1 or 2 of them that resonate with you. And from there, begin to bring them into your life. Ask yourself more questions. Make friends with those difficult emotions as well as with the pleasurable emotions, because all of them are there to serve you. And all of us at Leadership Coach Group, of course, wish you so much luck and high frequency in the future. And please reach out to us if we can help. And from here, I'll hand it back to Michael.
Thank you so much, Jerry. So many of those strategies resonated with me. So I'm glad we'll have this opportunity to dive into them a little bit deeper. So what we suggested when we had people participate in the live webinar, we asked them to let go of the story that they have and to then ask a gateway question. And gateway questions were introduced to us by Sylvia before, one of our fellow coaches and one of our internationally recognized speakers. And she said that gateway questions help open up our awareness and move us into solution. So what I'm going to ask you, Jerry, is some gateway questions for you to help me in some of the work I might do with my clients. So I'm going to start with questions that start like what can I do to anchor myself, or how can I shrink my cognitive load? And when we have volunteers, we often have certain requirements, but I'm already ready to volunteer. And thank you for being open and ready for that. The thing that really, lots of what you shared resonated with me, and maybe we'll get into to the different strategies, but the first strategy, name it to tame it's probably the one that resonated with me most deeply. And
Okay.
like I really love the stimulus and response and the Viktor Frankl, lots of wisdom there. I've shared that with my clients, and Stephen Covey and 7 Habits, highly effective people built on that. What I want to ask you about is that how do you bring that awareness in the moment when you're caught up with some emotion? And I think of myself as a male and some of my clients that are men that maybe don't have as great emotional intelligence as some of our female colleagues or friends. And we might not be great at naming emotions and of bringing awareness in that moment. So what advice do you have for me and for my clients? How can we bring that awareness in the moment when we might be caught up in an emotion that we might not even be able to easily name?
That's a great question. I think in some ways, the final strategy around frequency is sort of the umbrella to all these other strategies. And so it does begin with the awareness, the space, as Viktor Frankl would say, to just know yourself well enough to say, right now, I know I'm not feeling good. I'm having stress. I'm having difficulty. And when that feeling arises, this is what's called somatics. We have these feelings in our body, and we often shove them down. We push them down. And the only way to get through these difficult feelings is to move through them, to acknowledge them, and to release them. So if we just ignore it and just, tighten up and keep going and try to push through, we're doing ourselves a huge disservice. So be your own doctor. Say, something's not good right now. What's the story I'm telling myself? Because if you think about it, everything in your universe, you are perceiving a story. There may be an action out there, a circumstance out there where I get very, very upset about it and freak out about it, and you are completely calm, but we're both experiencing the exact same situation. The calm you is the person who knows, hey, how important is this really? How much is this going to ruin my life tomorrow, today, in 5 years? How do I understand my reaction to this? And this goes really very deep if you look into somatics and how the body holds and stores emotion and memory and triggers. The first thing we want to do is just acknowledge it and say, it's okay to have this feeling. How can I move from it? So one of the first things there is taking the breath, knowing that you're not feeling well, and asking yourself, okay, let's play a game. And this might all happen in a split second. I'm going to play a game. What's the name of the emotion? And maybe I'll give this emotion a name, Fred. And what can I ask Fred to do? Go away. Thank you, Fred, for warning me. Most of our negative emotions are trying to protect us. So if we can say, thank you, I'm going to choose not to go into that emotion right now so that I can lead calmly, so that I can help deliver or help this other person through their situation. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, thank you, Jerry. I guess a takeaway for me in that is like being aware of also where that emotion or stress might be in my body. For me, often it's kind of back here in the back of my shoulders and upper back. I feel some tightness there often when I'm stressed. So that's great to be aware of that. And the naming it, like I hear what you say, that you don't even have to have the right emotional word. You can just name it something, like you said, Fred, or whatever it might be. I don't need to know the specific emotion I'm feeling, but just being aware that there is that emotion. And then I heard you also talk about maybe my emotions being heightened because of the story I'm telling about the situation, but may not be the actual situation I'm in. But if I could ask a follow-up question. So how can we, in the moment, right? We help our clients in coaching after the moment, right? But in the moment, how can we recognize that I'm spun up because of the story, and the story I'm telling myself is not necessarily true, right? That there could be a different perspective on that. How can I bring some awareness that I'm caught in a story?
I think by knowing that there are many, many stories, maybe even saying to myself, I know that this is a story and I'm going to paint a different story. I'm going to choose to move this story into a better place in the moment, And you cannot influence the situation, of course, but you can influence how you're perceiving it, how you're going to move through it, through your breath, through any number of things like that.
Yeah, I like that whatever is going on, it's a story, and
Right.
that we can rewrite stories. We can, we've got, whether it's paper, we can use an eraser, or on a computer, we can use a cursor to delete, right? And then write a new story, because we have
Right.
that power. It's about our life and how we're interpreting it.
Yeah.
One thing I've found with my clients, Jerry, is when they have a strong resonance, is sometimes it's because it strikes against a value that's very important to them, whether it's integrity or justice, or those are some values for me that are important, but could be different for different clients. And then when they interpret a situation as going against those values, then sometimes that's when I see the strongest reactions. Has that been your experience?
Definitely. It's interesting. I often don't. I don't know why I'm bringing this up, but I was thinking that there was some questions being asked around like what brings out your anger. And for me, it's only when I see it's only when I see other people being treated poorly. And so that's just, other things don't anger me. It's like almost like I want to protect people. So I'm very aware of that protective quality in myself. And, it's not really my business to go protect everybody that I see being treated poorly. But I bring that up because I have to remember that is my story, that it's, who knows where it came from. And there's a lot around psychology with that stuff, which is so interesting, but that's not coaching. And so for us, as coaches, I like to help my clients just understand their reactions, without going too deep into the psychology part. Just, what are the triggers that you've noticed recently that set you off, and how can we change the lens on them? If you were your best version of yourself all the time, how would you react to something like that? And it is a practice. We can be aware of these 5 strategies, but we can only cognitively aware, but they're not going to work unless we stop and practice them. Like so many things in life, we can know a lot, but if we're not putting it into our daily actions, really working with our mindset, not much is going to change. So yeah, it's some effort, but it's amazing personal development, and really fun to see clients adopting these strategies and working with them and saying, that wasn't that hard to do. I feel so much better. I'm having this very great day of meaningful work by just doing a couple of thinking differently. I was saying this morning how we're so fortunate in many ways to live in a democracy where we can choose how we want to be and what we say and what we do, for the most part. So why not be the best version of ourselves as much as we can if we have these tools?
Thank you, Jerry. Let me give Carl an opportunity if you have anything you wanted to ask Jerry. If not, I have more questions too.
Yeah, so I really love this session, by the way. Like, I know that this is a re-recording, but it's kind of like, as you said, repetition is king. So I keep learning more as we go, especially with the open coaching part. But anyway, one of the things that really resonated with me was the micro recoveries one. And, you were talking about this is not micro recovery, this is micro recovery. And what I do keep doing every day as my own micro recovery is actually making my own tea and then drinking it. Because, like, this is one of the things that I love to do. Like I'm also very passionate about. I love like making my own tea. Like this is called matcha. I don't know if you guys heard about that drink. So I really love the process. Like it's very therapeutic. But I was just thinking, like one of the things that you said that was not a micro recovery was taking a snack and drinking a coffee. So I was just thinking, is it possible, or if it is, like how do I make my own micro recovery that is tea, drinking it? How do I make it like a micro recovery so that it is passable as one? Yeah.
Well, I think what you're saying is absolutely a micro recovery because it sounds like you're very mindful when you're doing it. Like you're making it. I'm imagining you have to take the leaves and do the thing. Whereas, most of us in America just go push a button on our Nespresso machine and, grab it. We're not even looking at it. We're just like getting the caffeine in our bodies. So I think this is a beautiful process, especially if you're like really present with it. Yeah. There was a book from the 70s, I think, called Cut Wood, Carry Water. It's just about being really present with the things that you're doing to create your life. So you don't have your headphones in, you're not dancing, you're not on the phone with someone while you're doing the tea. You're just like, thank you for this beautiful plant that's giving me such a good feeling.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing.
I think that what it boils down to is being very mindful, meaning you're fully present with the thing you're doing. One thing that's also suggested is just looking around your room. Look at my nice lamp. Look at my nice duck decoy. Look at my brick wall. It literally just calms you. It just gives you like, I wish we all had fMRI machines attached to our heads. We could just say, oh, wow, that really just totally changed my brain wave, because that's what you would see. You would absolutely see different parts of your brain lighting up when it's calm, and it's incredible. It's exciting.
Jerry, I felt my brain lighting up when I don't know if you did this intentionally or not, but when you were talking with Carl about brewing tea, you said what this boils down to. That pun just really lit up my brain.
I did not notice that. Oh, that's funny. That's a good one. We're a bunch of comedians here at Leadership Coach Group.
True.
Yeah,
Thank you so much,
if I could jump in, Carl, like what you were talking about being present and what Jerry's saying about the physicality, I took this, went on this meditation retreat with my wife, and one of the things like they talked about was putting a raisin in your mouth and just keeping it on your tongue and feeling the texture and rolling it around. So like just being really aware of the senses. We, like you said, in the United States, I don't think we often enjoy our meals that way, or brew the tea the way Carl's doing to really appreciate that process and where those ingredients came from.
Exactly. And I think it's really important. I was kind of joking about like, why not be the best version of yourself? But we really have to ask ourselves, why not? Why do we have to live in a fast-paced society? The society, I mean, we are part of that society, but we don't have to live that way if we choose not to. A lot of people are perfectly happy doing that. And that's wonderful. But it's also making a lot of people very ill. And so I think we have to be really conscious, like, hey, I don't have to follow the leader here. I can make my own decisions about how I want to create my environment, the practices that I bring into my life. And it becomes a lot more special because you're creating it with yourself, with your family, your loved ones. Even if it's just an hour or two on a certain day that you have a special ritual with your family that other people aren't doing. And it's a way of being able to be grateful and present with the simplest of things. And typically for most people, I believe that's really when you're at your most fulfilled, is with those simple pleasures.
If I could bring up one other thing that resonated with me, Carl, and Jerry, is that the last slide where you were talking about going with curiosity, and that's something we did as a team when this, I think so, when this recording, didn't work the first time, they were just like curious, okay, how did that happen? How do we prevent that from happening again? What can we do differently in the future? Like, I hope that we all experience that without judgment, and we just brought that curiosity. I haven't always done that in my life. I think usually my first reaction in the past, maybe some modeling I saw when I was younger, was to bring judgment. Someone screwed up, it's a mistake, and
Defense
it couldn't be
mechanisms.
me. It couldn't have been me, right? That might have been hopefully the 1.0 version of Michael. But for people that are, and I don't always go with curiosity, right? I'm still in the process of being in my better self. How do we shift into that curiosity, Jerry? Because they're kind of like my first question. It's like, in the moment, how do we name it and tame it? Same thing, like if we might have a natural inclination to judgment and blame, how do we shift into curiosity in that moment?
I would say it's really difficult because it's an amazing skill, but it's also very, very difficult because when we're in conflict, and usually, there's some sort of conflict, like even if a recording didn't happen, we're conflicted with a situation. Like we kind of like, you can feel like a gut punch, right? And you're like, how did this happen? It's immediate defense mechanism. And I think about relationships and how when there's conflict in a relationship, it's either fight or flight, right? So you're either going, for me, either shut down, or I want to be defensive and say, I didn't do that, or whatever it may be. Can you imagine just the skill of saying, tell me more about how you're feeling? I'm really curious. Like, instead of making it about us, how can the higher self would say, tell me more. I want to understand. I deeply, deeply want to understand where you're coming from, to see how I can be better, or how I can fix it, or how we can work together to come to a solution that makes sense for both of us in an agreement. We have expectations, and when our expectations aren't met, our nervous system freaks out. And we just need to, if we could always be curious, one thing I have a lot of clients do around curiosity or any other thing that they want to bring into their world is just, one of those little yellow stickies to put it on their laptop. So you're just constantly reminded. But it's hard. It's definitely, it's one of those things, like in retrospect, I've always thought, oh, I wish I had just stopped and been more curious than on a mission to protect. And that's just, it's what we do physiologically as mammals, but again, a challenge to use our brains a little more wisely.
Thank you very much, Jerry. Carl, maybe we bring our slides back up, and I appreciate it. Like Carl said, I think it's good to have go deeper and try this recording again. Hey, maybe it worked out better for us all, at least this team here. So I'll invite you to do our closing reflection, Jerry.
Yeah, just remember, we don't need to control, we cannot, and we do not need to put the expectation on ourselves to control all of the chaos or any of the chaos. We can only control how we react to different situations, and the best way forward as a leader and as a family member or partner is to find our most calm self. And we're not trying to be angels or superpowers, but we're just trying to tune into that part of us that is much more open. And these 5 techniques hopefully will help you do that. Your ripple effect in the world is you probably don't know how much impact you each have on the people around you. And it's a beautiful thing to think you can make a really positive change, not just for yourself, but for everyone in your universe. So thank you so much for tuning in today.
Thank you very much, Jerry. We'd like to reflect as you're watching this recording on what you will take with you today. Because as coaches, we encourage you to take action on what you learn. So if you could, before you sign out, before you close this recording, think about what takeaways do you have from the content Jerry shared and the coaching she did for Carl and I. And I'd like you to take action on that thing. try to figure out how you can put it into your life so you will experience that inner calm. So you'll have a more ease in the way you live your life. We wish that for you. So we encourage you to take some action based on what you learned today. And so what you have access to on our webpage is the Calm in the Chaos playbook. We encourage you to download that playbook and read through it and use some of the exercises. Whatever is useful to you, we want to be able to support you in doing that. And then you'll have access to the slide deck, and you'll also see a button to schedule a complimentary coaching session with Jerry. It's free. There's no obligation. We hope you take advantage of that so you can, maybe like you saw Carl and I, get some coaching. You'll have the opportunity about how to apply some of these strategies or anything you want Jerry's help with. Encourage you to take advantage of that resource as well. And we welcome your feedback. We're doing these webinars for you. We want them to be impactful in your life and have that ripple effect that Jerry talked about for the people around you. And so we'd like to know, are we hitting the mark? What could we do differently? Are there other topics you'd like us to cover? We'd love your feedback. You can scan this QR code to give us feedback, and then we'd be able to act on your feedback. So we appreciate it if you take the time to do that. And we have coaches that are experts in helping you reach that calm in the chaos. Of course, led by Jerry, you just heard from today. But we have many other coaches, Tushar, Lisa, Rob, Angela, myself, Sarah, Mike, and Jen. These are some of our coaches that specialize in helping achieve some calm in the chaos. We call them our calm crew, at least for this webinar. We nicknamed them that. And we want to encourage you to take advantage of our next webinar coming up on June 6th at noon Eastern Standard Time. That's called Career Disruption, your launching pad to reset and rise. And we worked on a graphic that tried to symbolize that. You know, you can look at things as an opportunity. Just like we talked about, if there's something that doesn't go quite right that you weren't able to control, that can happen in your career too. You can say, okay, approach that with curiosity, like Jerry said. And then instead of working on control, you can say, how can I influence my future? What can I do to pick a different path? And that's what we're going to talk about next month. So we're here for you. You can reach out to us. We have our telephone number. It's available 24/7. We have my email address there. Feel free to reach out to me directly, and I'll be happy to help you, connect you with some of the resources that we talked about. And this is our website. If you'd like to learn more about us and our services, we welcome that. We'd love to hear from you. Please do reach out. And so with that, I want to thank our whole team again, Jerry for presenting this content, Carl for being like our producer, and Maya for helping our customers access our resources and being present in our webinars. We really appreciate you that are watching this, that have made an investment in your leadership journey. We commend you on that. We hope you do take some action. We'd love to hear from you. If there's any way we can support you as you go through the next chapters of your leadership journey, we want to be your partner for leadership growth. So thank you all for joining us. We wish you the best. Take care.